Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm Tanya, and I have a special guest today. Her name is Jamie McDevitt, and she's been a Facebook friend of mine for many years from part of the Cavalier community. So I just wanted to give you a little information about Jamie, and today we're going to be talking about blind dogs. Jamie is a fifth grade teacher and a Cavalier lover. Jamie acquired her first Cavalier, Rustin, in the fall of 2009. In March of 2010, Crash, and that's who we're going to be talking about today, and Roxy joined the family. They both have gone to the Rainbow Bridge now, so it might be a little hard, and we might see some tears from Jamie, but we're going to stay strong today. Her current Cavaliers include Rustin, who's 15. He's older than Dexter, if you believe that. And Quinn, 14, and Stevie, who is 2.5 and still full of spunk from what I see online, and Pixie Dust, who's also 2. In addition to her own Cavaliers, she has fostered numerous Cavaliers for rescue groups, who included Molly, who delivered 5 beautiful puppies while in her care. So Jamie, thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to talk about Crash and blind dogs.
Thank you.
So Jamie, why don't you start off by giving a little history on how Crash became part of your life?
So I was a new Cavalier owner when I met Crash, and I had joined the local AKC Cavalier Club. And we were at a play day, which is a meeting where everybody brings their dogs. And over in the corner is this gal who I did not know, and she's holding this little puppy. And I can see that he has this big, bulging, ugly eye, but he's just a little tiny puppy. And so, of course, I head over and she hands me the puppy and explains, that he came in to rescue this way, product of a backyard breeding situation. And he also had a broken tail. So he had a little corkscrew looking tail. And I didn't put that puppy down through the whole meeting. And I already had a contract on Roxy. She was already born, but wasn't old enough to come live with me yet. And I kept saying, I can't have 3 dogs. That's ridiculous. And a friend said to me, he and his wife had no children, and she was a Cavalier breeder. He said, I'll tell you what, if you adopt that dog, and if you ever need to, board it somewhere when you travel on business, because that was another issue. He said, he is welcome here anytime. And I went home and about an hour later emailed the gal and said, I want him. And that's what happened.
Oh, that's so sweet. Do you know how old was Crash at that time?
He was, I want to say he was 10 weeks old when they brought him to the meeting. So just barely away from mom. Yeah. And then when I got him was about 2 weeks later. So he was about 12 weeks old.
So what were you doing in those 2 weeks?
I spoke with my trainer because Rustin was still in weekly training, and I told her I'm getting this dog. He's, he's 100% blind, and a vet had confirmed that he was born with only one eye, and that was the bulging, ugly eye. It was covered by a huge cataract, and it was painful for him. So I also had made appointments to take him to my vet to have the vet look at the eye and determine if he would remove it, and if he would give the rescue any discount, because the rescue initially was going to pay for that. We swapped. Instead of paying the rescue for his adoption, I said I would pay for the surgery. So yeah, so about 13 weeks old, he had his eye removed and was also neutered at that time.
So when he was at the play date, he was already fully blind?
Yes. He never had vision.
He never had vision. Okay. Yeah. So can you tell us about his blindness and what caused it?
So, again, being a product of backyard breeding, we don't know the details of, what actually went on there, but, it was kind of an assumption that he was probably inbred, or he came from an inbreeding situation. But since the one I never developed, and the vet could open, the eyelids there and look back, and there was a little tiny, I guess whatever a developing eye looks like, but it wasn't an eye. So that one obviously didn't have sight. And then his bad eye he was, to the best of our knowledge, he was born that way. And the rescue's vet had confirmed no vision, and my vet also confirmed no vision. So, in Crash's world, his world was normal. He didn't know anything different. And I always wondered if he knew, like, he's a dog, but does he know that people can see and other dogs can see?
Right,
But,
right.
he didn't know different.
So would you say that when you brought him home that he was like a typical puppy?
He was in many ways. Rustin was only about 9 months old, I think, when I brought Crash home. So Rustin was still frisky and playful. And Crash learned that day to fly through the dog door because he followed Rustin everywhere. He played. He wasn't like, a timid little injured or hurt puppy. He was as puppy as Rustin was, at 12 weeks when I brought Rustin home. So, I was worried that, am I going to have to carry him? I'm going to have to show him where his dog dish is. And, I showed him his kennel because they ate in kennels. And he learned which kennel was his and could fly in and out of it. And it was much easier than I ever expected it would be.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. So did he and Rustin get on pretty well right from the beginning?
Yes, it was, there were times, and, no disrespect to my little Roxy, but there were times that I thought, my goal was to have two. And I thought, geez, this is perfect. I don't even need the third. I mean, I had a contract on her. I was already in love with her. She lived her full life with me, but you never would have known watching Rustin and Crash play that he was blind, because he would roll Rustin over at times, and it was pretty cute.
And so Roxy was also an upcoming Cavalier puppy that was coming to your home too then?
Yes, she and Crash was about a month older than she is.
Okay. So she came then, and how long after Crash did Roxy come in? Or did Roxy
came in about 3 weeks after. Okay. So, and Roxy, she was purchased from a breeder in our club. And she was actually born over in California. So the breeder, the gal that had the puppies brought her to the breeder. Breeder had first pick. And that was the breeder's pick. And it was for me. So it was about 3 weeks after I got Crash.
Wow. that was quite an active house. 9-month-old puppy, a 15-week-old blind puppy, another little puppy. So how did you manage all three puppies at once?
I live, so for the people listening, I'm single. I live alone. I don't have any children. So it's just me at home. At the time I had 2 cats as well. And the cats weren't bothered at all by the dogs. But kennel training was probably the best thing, at that point they were still, I think all 3 were still sleeping in kennels at that time. And they had it down. And I think, Rustin's a big part of that, because I think they kind of followed his lead. And I could say to them, kennel up, and they would all go into their kennels. I'd close the door and then I'd go to bed. And they ate in their kennels. And, to this day, of course, Rustin's the only one left of the 3 of them, but Rustin still goes into his kennel to relax. He's never locked in his kennel unless I have a service person in or something, but that's where he relaxes. And I think that worked wonders. And if I had something going on or people in the home, which was unusual, all 3 would be in their kennels just so they didn't get stepped on, so.
That's great. Well, kudos to you. 3 puppies at once, that's a lot of work. So that's
they were busy. They were busy. And I was younger, and I also worked from home. So I did a lot of, back then, days that we'd go to the dog park, and, and I could manage the 3 of them. Now I would be, I'll take Pixie and Stevie, but I don't take all 4.
Yeah, that'd be a lot. So did you have to make any adjustments for Crash or in his surroundings?
I didn't have to do a whole lot, because my house is kind of designed that, you don't really move the living room furniture around or the bedroom furniture around, which in other homes that I've had, that was a common thing. But the way my house is, the floor plan is I mean, the sofa kind of goes where the sofa goes. And I did get new furniture at one point and changed from a sofa and a chair to a sofa and a love seat. So there, that was just a matter. Crash didn't run. Crash would walk. There was one place he would run, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But so yes, he would bang into things, but he learned really fast, and he didn't get hurt banging into things. So yeah, so in that regard. And then I have my dogs blocked. I have a walk-through baby gate in a hallway that blocks them from my front door, my guest bedroom, and then my sewing area. And so, there's no chance of them, getting out by mistake. And
yeah. So baby gates were pretty helpful for you to kind of
and
setting in places that
Yeah.
you wouldn't want him that weren't maybe crash proof.
Right. But he, of course, he didn't jump up on the sofa and didn't use the stairs up to the bed. So in that regard, I mean, he had to be lifted up and down, and we had a system and it worked, and he eventually learned to jump off the couch, which was nice.
So I was just going to say, you said that just now he had a system. So was there a specific training? How did you teach him that we're going to go up on the bed or up on the sofa and not jump off of the bed? Was that just natural for him, or did you have something like Dexter has a bumper around the bed? Not that he's blind, but he has a habit of, I'm going to lay at the edge of the bed and fall up
and then roll over. Yeah, no, I started out with what I think a lot of people do with young ones. And, I had pillows lined up on the other side of the bed. And I did buy a baby bumper for that side of the bed, kind of for the same reason. I feel like he could sense the edge, but sometimes they sleep and roll over in their sleep. And I mean, he did fall off my side of the bed one time. And it's really sad. He was sleeping on the side of me, which is not normally where he slept. And it was the middle of the night. I rolled over and kicked him off by mistake because I didn't know he was there. And, he was fine. Yeah. But in general, he slept on the side with the baby gate. And then on the couch, I would always say to him, he'd want to come up and he'd put his paws up on it. If I was sitting on the couch, he'd want to be up. And so when I lifted him, I would just say up, and then he was on. And I tried for a long time to teach him to get down by laying on his tummy and putting his feet over the edge, because the couch isn't high up, and he could slide off and feel the floor. But it took a long, long time before he was comfortable with that. And he would just bark, and let me know when he was ready.
Okay. So the way he would communicate was vocally, like, bark, here I am, Mom, I need something. I need some kind of attention. So did he ever, he ended up sliding off the sofa. So that's kind of how he learned. If he didn't bark, he'd kind of slide off.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what he did he just learned to kind of slide on his tummy until his feet touched the ground.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was really cute.
Do you have any old videos?
I'll have to look and see if I have videos of him coming off the couch. Yeah. I remember posting it on Facebook, but I don't know if I took a video of it. Yeah, but
I'll have to take a peek.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just said I'll have to take a peek.
Yeah. In bed, my bed's really high up, so I never tried to teach him to find the stairs or anything. But as he got older, he loved to be in bed, and that was fine on the weekends. On the days that I worked, I had to get him up, but on the weekend, there were times that, he truly didn't want to get out of bed. He didn't stand up, and I would leave him in bed, and then he would just give me a little bark when he was ready to get up. And there was one day, I said, it was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I finally went in and I thought, you have to be up now. So I made him get up. But
you can't sleep the whole day away.
Right. Even though that's what
get up, you gotta get moving.
Yeah.
So besides the baby gates and like the bed bumper, are there any other products or anything like that you tried to use for him, or that you do like for him to help navigate or live life as a blind dog?
I had made covers for their kennels because they're in the middle of my my living room or family room, and so their kennels had covers, and I always kind of wondered, for Crash, I would, his, sense of hearing certainly would be heightened being blind. And I always wondered if that kind of helped buffer any, not that my house is noisy, but any noise. And if it also helped him identify his kennel by smell, and I don't know 100, it's just what I did, to make the crates look a little more inviting to me and other people. There's a whole crowd of people out there that, your dogs sleep in cages, and I wanted them to look less cage-like. But what I found for Crash that I loved is toys that made distinct sounds. And I found some rope toys, like tug toys, which I'm going to say it out now so people know, you don't ever leave those with your dogs unattended.
If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It tells YouTube that you like the video and shows it to more pet parents and keeps our content coming your way.
But they were scented. And there was one that smelled like cherry and one that smelled like lime. And I forget what the other one was. But between those and the toys that made specific sounds, especially the ones with the sounds, Crash learned to identify some of them by sound. So I could say, go get chirp, chirp. And he would go and find, because he could find the bird without its chirping, because they have a toy box and he knew where it was, but it was distinct. And yeah, he could find it and bring it to me.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Now I know you're a crafter and that sort of thing. Did you ever make any toys for him that had anything like that?
No, I didn't. And I honestly never thought about it because at the time I was able to find a lot of things, and I could find them in like places maybe you don't go looking for dog toys, like TJ Maxx and, those types of places. And still to this day, that's where I buy a lot of the toys because they're less expensive than PetSmart. And, but I did buy some of them at, like PetSmart and Petco, just because they were distinct, and had the sounds. But
well, I know when I had my golden retriever, Theo, one of his favorite toys was this big plush tennis ball. Well, it designed like a tennis ball, but it was just a fluffy ball. But it had a box in there that I could pull out and I could record it. So I could make that voice, and I always called him Pookie Pookie. So I recorded Pookie Pookie, Mommy love you. So, he'd squeeze it, and it would have those kind of things. So that, for those that do have blind dogs or just dogs in general, they have toys like that. Or like I said about Jamie being a crafter, you can buy the individual things and make your own toy. So when you talked about scents and sounds, I'm a crafter at heart. I don't do it anymore, but I'm like, oh, we could make things, with the noises and the scents and, things like that. So, so that would be really good. And Theo, my golden, he was, even though he was a sighted dog, he loved noise boxes. And it's been 20 some years, since I've had him, 15 years since he passed. But at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of dog toys that had that. So like you said, I was going into like baby toys and things like that, because they tended to have those music boxes and stuff. So, so it's neat to hear that Crash really like those noise boxes and stuff.
Right.
So, good.
And I had a friend that she used to make stuff. She'd get Cavalier fabric and she'd make bags and toys and all kinds of things. But she gave me a couple toys that were as simple as like a little fabric bag with a zip, with a Velcro top. And like you'd put a water bottle in it, and empty so it crackles.
Crunches.
And then one had just like cellophane in it. Same thing, it crackled. And he loved those. That would be easy to make and put one of those boxes in.
Yeah.
That's online awesome. For those.
A little bit of fleece, and you could even tie it up, so if you don't even sew it all, you could get some fleece, cut a couple, corners in there and tie them in knots, obviously mix and stuff. So, if you can't find the toys online, get creative.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've seen a lot of I don't want to say contraptions, but I have seen a lot of products, like the halo that goes over their head so they bump it and stuff. So you didn't need any of that kind of stuff for Crash. He just kind of, since he was blind, it was normal.
Since he was born blind, he'd never had a time in his life where he was used to running and moving quickly. And so he was just, you'd call him and he would come, but he never ran. And so in the house, and even in the yard, I didn't have to worry about him too much. I don't have a ton of plants in my backyard, but I do have citrus trees, or at the time I had one citrus tree, and they have thorns. So my landscaper always made sure that there were no branches from the trunk. So, I mean, because these thorns are huge, and they're not bendy thorns. I mean, if you back into one, you're getting stabbed.
Oh,
So
yeah.
just to protect all of the dogs.
Right. And yourself.
and myself.
So you said earlier about him running at a certain place. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So in my backyard, so I live in Arizona. So my backyard is all, there's no grass. It's all crushed granite. But from my gate all the way to the backyard, I have a paver walkway. And nothing's on that walkway. It's really just so I can roll the trash cans if I want to do yard work. And Crash would go to the front gate, and he would run on that paver path. And I think he learned by himself, because I did not, try to teach this behavior, that path was always clear and he could feel it, and it felt different. So what I did is I made sure that I always swept the granite off of it, because there was granite on either side. So, and granite's just like crushed rock. That's what we call it here in Arizona. I would make sure it was swept so that he could feel it, and he wouldn't all out run. It's not like a dog chasing a ball, but for Crash, it was running. It was, definitely a running gait.
No, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
So that was his running activity, but you did say you got him as a puppy. So did he not experience puppy zoomies where they get crazy and run? And
no, he really didn't experience those. His crazy was with Rustin, and those two, I mean, they'd be climbing on each other and doing the little puppy growls, and Crash he would instigate the play a lot of times. He would have something in his mouth, and he would do that low throaty growl that they do for playing to try and get Rustin to take, or to tug with him. But yeah, he never had the puppy zoomies.
Oh, that's sweet. And for those wondering, I will put a video link below on the puppy zoomies. So if your head's like, what the heck is a puppy zoomie? I'll go ahead and link that below too. Hi everyone, are you loving this content so far? Do you want to dive even deeper into the world of positive dog training and natural care? If so, you'll want to join my amazing community on Patreon. I have a variety of tiers to meet everyone's needs. Plus, by becoming a member, not only will you receive fun perks, your support also helps me continue creating the content you love. So thank you, and let's get back to the video.
Yeah, even after bath, he didn't have the zoomies. So.
Bath mad, we call that in this house.
Yeah. Yes.
So can you describe like a typical day in the life of Crash? What was that like? I mean, was there, just the regular puppy stuff, or did you have to do anything specific, like care for his eyes?
So in his typical day, when I got him, I worked from home. Although I was a field employee for the company I worked for, I wasn't in education at the time. So about 3 days a week, I would go out and see clients. Most of the time, I wasn't gone all day. But a tip. So once his eye was removed and he was off of, the antibiotics and that kind of stuff and the pain meds, there really wasn't a whole lot different than other dogs. And the day was probably pretty dull. We get up, the first thing that, like most families with dogs, first thing they do is go outside. I live in a neighborhood, but, coyotes and hawks and stuff are common here. So I'm pretty careful about my dogs going outside in the dark. So, we go outside, they do their thing, come in and eat. And I made time in the morning before I started work to get down on the floor and play with them, because they were young pups at the time. And sometimes we, would go out, in the evening if I wanted to take them, if it was decent weather, which means not too hot here. Sometimes we go to the dog park and, in the late afternoon, early evening. But most of the time that was reserved for Saturdays or Sundays. Again, since I don't walk my dogs in my neighborhood because we have a lot of loose dogs, and I can't protect 3 dogs, because at the time I had 3 and I'd walk all 3 together. Crash, I would take out front a lot of times since he didn't run. I would take him out on a leash and kind of walk him up and down my street a little bit. But, you know, and as they got older, I would say that and when I went to work out of the home, you know, their day was pretty dull, and I would check in because I have cameras so I can see them. But there's a lot of sleeping during the day. So that made eat for more playing at night. But, you know, there was, you know, with 3 of them, there was grooming, you know, throughout the week, because I never would groom, you know, I mean, even when I say groom, even brush 3 at once, because it was hard on my back and it took a long time. So, you know, there was that training class, because all 3 went through, they went through a class at an organization where there were 3 different levels. And I wanted Crash to be a therapy dog. So I wanted to go through all of that so that he would be prepared to test to be a therapy dog.
Oh,
And
good. I definitely want to talk about that. But before that, you mentioned taking him for a walk. So I'm just curious on how that was, you know, how it might differ than teaching a seeing dog to go for a walk. Was he more nervous about going where he didn't know where he was going?
You know, I never felt like he was nervous. In fact, I felt like he was a very confident dog for being blind. But I think that also had to do with, you know, I got him into puppy class. He had already been vaccinated when I got him, so he was clear, you know, to go to class right away. I got him into puppy class, and what we did is, the trainer I worked with, she said, you know, what I'd like to do is I'd like him to come to puppy class, because half of that class was just socialization. It was the puppies playing together and their handlers learning, you know, when to, you know, intercede and when to let them manage their own business. And so I would go to that, and then I paid for private training with him. So 30 minutes of, or no, maybe the class was, no, the class was an hour. So 30 minutes of puppy socialization. And then later we'd go back for 30 minutes of private training. And her thing was, she used the waist leash, and I'd done that with Rustin and loved it. And Crash learned to walk next to me. You know, it was just a lot of treating. And sometimes when I was walking, I would stomp my feet a little bit so he could hear. And my thought was, you know, he's hearing the rhythm. And so they also learned, when we take off on the left foot is when they walk. And when we stop, and I would stomp when I stopped, so he'd know to stop and sit. And it, amazingly enough, it was not that much different than Rustin. Other than Rustin, I could give the hand signal to. Crash also was trained by hand signals, so he would have, you know, 2 modalities. And it was
Rustin.
Yes, Rustin was, they were both trained with hand and Crash was trained with voice and touch. Rustin was trained with voice and hand signals. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So did you use a lot of touch, you know, like to get his attention, and the stomping to hear it and feel it? So is that one of the ways that you helped him know you were there and communicate?
Yes. So, you know, when we first started with the walking, you know, I would stomp my feet, because it was kind of a step, stomp, sit. And I would have to give him, the sit command was, you know, a little nudge under the chin. And I would at first give him that command along with saying it, but he quickly learned that when I stopped, he was to stop and sit. He didn't learn things, and I didn't work with him on this. Like Rustin, if he was on a long line and I would tell him to come, and then I would do a finish command, and he would go around me, you know, come to my right, go around the back of me, and sit at my left on my heel. I didn't bother to teach that to Crash. That was more for looks with Rustin. I didn't think Crash needed it.
So can you tell us about your therapy dog journey and how that played out?
So, you know, through my private training, you know, the handler or the trainer knew that this is, you know, a goal. And at that time, there weren't that many therapy groups. So we were going through Delta. and I knew what skills they had to have. So basically, once they get their CGC, their Canine Good Citizen, they have pretty much all the skills. The other thing that they needed to be okay with was maybe what you'd say is clumsy petting. So when you consider that you might go into places where there were, if you're working, say, with disabled children and, their hand motions weren't quite right, they had to be used to that, and maybe some odd noises, thinking of, deaf individuals speaking, or even, children with special challenges. And so we worked a little bit with that. We worked with, and it wasn't as important for Crash, but we did work around a walker and let him sniff the walker, and, canes and that kind of thing. But when I took Crash for his test, we were the only ones there. I scheduled the test because there weren't a lot of evaluators for Delta in the area. And we went up one night and I did, she told me everything, that, do this, do that. And she gave Crash, he scored perfect on everything. And she wrote on his form that he was the most inspirational, or she said, we were the most inspirational team she had ever seen. And she just gushed on and on about him. And that's just what he was like. He never met an enemy. He, didn't cower, and anybody could pet him, child, adult, anybody could touch him, and he loved it. So.
Yeah, I've never even actually met you or Crash,
Right.
personally, but just online, and just seeing him over the years and what you posted, he definitely touched me, and he touched a lot of people. Can you tell us about his first visit, your first visit as a team?
Yeah, so our very first visit as a team was just going, we worked at a hospital that's just really close to me here. And I chose that as much as I wanted to work with kids. Like the children's hospital was just too far away to be able to go after work. So we went to a hospital really close to my home, and our very first visit, well, actually we'd met the volunteer coordinator prior to that, but our first true visit was just with employees at the hospital. So it was walking Crash around the hospital and letting him meet a bunch of different people in areas that had different smells. So, he met people in the admin office, and he met nurses and doctors up on, on the different floors of the hospital, and, went through emergency where there's a lot of, I would say there's more traffic in the emergency department. And, he just, of course, this is Crash, but he just charmed everybody. And then, and then we started going, to the hospital on a regular basis. And I loved doing it, and Crash loved doing it. As he got older, he tires more quickly, because I think, he's seeing his world through his nose and his ears. So he sniffs a lot and moves a little slower, but I felt like he was tiring, and Delta was adamant that you could not use a stroller or a wagon. And then the other thing too is here in Arizona, it gets hot enough that our dogs can't walk on the sidewalks in the heat of the summer.
Right.
And, it's not that Crash was heavy, but it just became a situation where I didn't feel it was the best situation for Crash. And so we stopped after about 2 years. And
good for you for always being his advocate. When I talk to people, and, I used to, Dexter's a therapy dog. I used to teach therapy dog classes even before Dexter. The ones I actually taught were through Delta Society way back when. And then I did also transition to a different organization that did allow for strollers.
Yes.
You had to also test in the stroller. So if you're going to do the stroller, you had to do a separate test in the stroller. But,
right.
Just like you said, Dexter is that 30-pound large Cavalier, and just, I can't carry him. I just can't pick him up and carry him. And then, if he's walking, he's always too short, for the people to pet him in the wheelchairs or to pet them in the beds. So I was very grateful for that. But like you as well, there was a time where it's like, you got to do what's best for the dog. So, Dexter's visits were always shorter than maybe because he does have Chiari malformation, so he does tire as well quicker.
Right.
And with, like you said, with Crash, sorry, with Crash smelling and hearing, and getting his world, that stress and then that then their body is like that. This is going to wear them out. So again, big kudos for you for recognizing that he needed to take less time or needed to say, this isn't going to be a life career for us. So that's great.
Right.
After your therapy dog, when you decided not to do that, did you guys do anything else to try to fill that void? Was there anything else that you guys picked up to do?
Yeah. So, we did a couple. I had met a gal online when I was working with rescue, and she had a little girl at the time. I want to say Emma was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years old and had cancer. And they were looking to adopt a Cavalier, and I wasn't able to help them there. But, I'm trying to remember. I started following her. And then they were doing a walk for Purple, which purple's the color for childhood cancer. And it was up at a park, and then it ended up being in a mall. And I took Crash up there and had a little purple bandana on him, and took him in the stroller in the mall. And of course, there were tons of kids because, lots of family friends were there. And, so again, he got all the loving and attention, and, just he'd lay on his back and let the kids pet him. And, so I tried to do, I did a couple other, local walks, walks for leukemia and that type of thing, just to get him out. And he was really easy to take anywhere because, if I picked him up, he wasn't a wiggler. I could actually let him out my front door since he didn't run. He wasn't going to bolt into the street like, I would never let my other dogs out the front door, off of a leash, but he was easy to take. So if I was going somewhere where I could take a dog, I would take him. Like he flew with me, probably 4 different times to see my sisters in Seattle because he was easy to fly with. I had a kennel up there for him. I could leave him, when we would go out, and he would be fine. So yeah, he got to travel quite a bit.
So did Crash have any special things that he enjoyed? Like what were his favorite things to do?
I think probably he would lay on his back in my lap for belly rubs. But I really think anything that had people involved, where he just craved attention, but in my home, not like an irritating attention craver, but he just loved attention. And I had that you mentioned in my bio about Molly, the rescue dog that had puppies in my home. Crash adored those puppies, and I'll send you pictures. He would lay on his back and let the puppies climb all over him, where my sighted dogs were kind of like, what are these little things, and they would let the puppies sniff them, and they'd stay on the ground, but they weren't really, letting the puppies climb on them and stuff, where Crash just thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought I should rent him out to my breeder friends, as a playmate.
Yeah, you have those, back when I used to teach in North Carolina. I'm in Ohio now, but when I taught in North Carolina, the owner of the dog training facility had what we called a mama dog. And it was the dog that when I had a puppy class and, I might have had that awkward puppy that didn't quite know how to interact or was a little more boisterous, she'd drop off her mama dog because that mama dog just would come in and just soothe everybody. All the puppies would calm down and hang out and stuff. So, sometimes there's just those dogs that just have that energy that, attract the puppies and know how to help them and stuff. So definitely sounds like Crash was a papa dog. That would be.
Oh, he was.
So it seems like Crash is pretty adaptable, but did you have to think about his new environment? So like when you went to visit your family, how did you introduce him? Was it challenging or just like,
it wasn't really hard. I kept him, since we weren't there, all the time. So I felt like each time we were there was a little bit of introduction, but my sister, no, her son was still at home. So he was still in junior high school. So it was just the two of them and then me, and she had dogs, and her dogs were all bigger. But very well behaved and, adaptable. She had backyard chickens. So, her dogs weren't eating the chickens. They were used to other animals. But I would first, have him on a leash, so that I could take him around to sniff the house. And it's a pretty small home, so it wasn't difficult in the home. But, he liked people. So he stayed where we were. And of course, he always slept with me. So at her house, he slept with me. And she had it, because her house is small, she had the guest bed pushed up against the wall, especially when it was only me. I think she'd pull it out if she had a couple staying. But that made it nice. Crash slept, on that side, so I didn't have to worry about him falling out of bed. But he was just that adaptable. In the airport, and I talked to a lot of people that have questions about traveling with their Cavaliers. I think the dog stroller is one of the greatest things they ever came out with. And I know that there are people that mock those of us that use them, and that's okay, mock away, but I would put Crash in his dog stroller. I would hang his carry bag on the back, and then I could put my purse in there. I'm a luggage checker, so I always checked my luggage. But I would wheel him out, we'd go through security and everything. And at the gate, he would sit in his stroller, and, I'd talk to him and love on him and, try to tug with him a little bit to wear him out, and then before boarding, I'd put him in his, in his carrier, and we'd wheel that stroller down and drop it just like a baby stroller. But I never had an issue with him, never a peep on the plane. And, he was considered my carry-on. He's, not emotional support dog, so he wasn't allowed out of his carrier. I would occasionally open it up and let his head pop out a little bit, but but no, he always did very well. Wasn't a fan, like I would take him to potty in the potty section at the airport, because all airports do have a dog potty section, and he never needed to. But I also didn't give food the morning that we traveled. So, he'd drink a little bit of water, but, I was just careful, and he did great every time. So
what a good boy.
Yeah.
You get those once in a million dogs, I think, sometimes.
Well, and I think because he was born blind, I think the challenges that a lot of people have is when their dogs go blind, and that's got to be very different for the dog. Like I said earlier, Crash never knew anything else.
Yeah.
That was his world.
So when you first adopted Crash, did you do any research on blind dogs beforehand? Did you hear any stories about dogs that have gone blind, dogs that are already blind, or did you just kind of go with the flow?
I didn't do a whole lot of research. The one thing I did is I did talk to our trainer. And I said, I think, I know I can't say that I did that before I adopted him, because I told them, like I said, an hour after I got home from that meeting, that I wanted him. But I guess in my mind, I felt like, I was in a good place. I owned my home, which was important with dogs. I never wanted to be, a situation where I couldn't find a new rental or whatever. And I felt fine, I was financially secure that, what he would need, I would be able to provide. And I thought, and it's because I work at home, I'm there, and I have the time to dedicate to whatever his needs happen to be. And more of my research came after I got him. And
so do you think you would have changed your mind? We know he's perfect now, but when you did do all that research, do you think if you would have known that stuff ahead of time, you would have adopted him?
Yeah, I do, because I think he was already, before I left that meeting, it killed me to even give him back to the gal so that I could leave the meeting. I think when it comes to dogs, a lot of times, most of the time I'm leading with my heart, more than my head. And that was certainly true for Crash. Somebody's going to adopt this dog, and, I know I have the time and the resources, and And then my friend Steve saying, because I was kind of worried about, my mom used to come and stay at my house when I would travel on business. And I was a little worried, she was, quite a bit older, and, if he's going to need to be picked up and brought in, and that might be a problem. But as it turned out, he never did stay with my friends. In fact, of all the dogs, if I was going to have a dog stay with somebody else, like my parents, it would have been Crash, because he was the easiest. So
do you have any tips or advice for people that might be considering adopting a blind dog?
Yeah, well, I think, if the dog is born blind, you're really adopting, in my mind, a dog, that's the dog's reality. It doesn't know any different. So it's not missing something that a dog that loses its vision has, or experiences. I think it's probably important that there be a certain amount of stability for, I don't know how Crash would have done if, I was moving every couple years, and changing homes, and, but through Crash's time, I did foster a lot of Cavaliers. That's all I've ever fostered were Cavaliers. And generally, I've not met a Cavalier that's a problem when you introduce them to other dogs. So, I think, every dog has a different personality, and, just because Crash was very easygoing, if you end up with a blind dog that's anxious, I would imagine that, that would take additional work that I did not have to put in with Crash. Crash, really, the training really was about those basic CGC skills, which I think all dogs should have. If you're going to have a dog, I think they should have the basic skills. Don't jump, sit, don't, walk nicely on a leash and those kind of things. But, you do have to keep in mind that any dog that you adopt, whether, it's a Cavalier or something else, they all have different personalities, and they're a product of their parents as well. So, but what I would say is I wouldn't hesitate to adopt, a blind dog. I wouldn't hesitate really I can't say I wouldn't hesitate to adopt a disabled dog. I would have to think, if a dog it's using wheels or something, I would have to think about my home and is it going to be able to get around? But, yeah,
So speaking of your home, we talked about earlier about using baby gates. Is your home a single floor home?
It is. It's single story. And like I said, the dogs don't have access to the front door, the guest room and guest bathroom. And then I have, they call it a library, but it's an open room. And that's my sewing studio. And for various reasons, I wouldn't want them in there. You can drop a pin or something. And, and honestly, I groom my dogs nicely, but there's still dog hair and I don't really want that in my studio. So they have the run of the rest of, well, I shouldn't say that. They're also not in my office. So they have the run of, that takes up all my bedrooms. I'm a great room floor plan. So they're dining room, living room, kitchen, and my bedroom. They have the run, and that's the area that I live in. Right now I'm in my office. The dogs are out, just behaving themselves. And if I sew for a couple hours, they're out behaving themselves. Yeah.
Well, that's good. We want to teach our dogs to have alone time too, that they don't have to be Velcroed to ourselves. So it's actually really good for their training and behavior to teach them to have alone time. So again, Crash seems to be, that great dog, not having any extra issues, but you didn't see any issues like leaving him, like he was a little more clingy or separation anxiety or anything like that from him?
No. I've been very lucky with my dogs. I have one right now, my 2.5-year-old. I don't know for certain if he's got a little separation anxiety, but he's very, very high strung. Cute as can be. And when he settles down, he's just, he lays in my lap and the whole bit. But he gets pretty excited when I'm getting dressed, and there's a lot of barking when I go to leave. But what I notice, like even with him, I pull out of the garage, I can stop at the end of the street, check the camera, and he's laying down, doing what he normally does when I'm home. So, yeah.
Well, that's excellent, Jamie. Do you have any final tips or words of advice for people interested
Well,
in
one of the big things, I have to credit Crash for a lot of the friends that I have in the Cavalier world. I have my local friends who I know personally, but I almost feel a little guilty that Crash was kind of my inroad to so many different groups and, so many people that I have met that, well, I'll tell you, if I'm ever in a position where I'm traveling on business again and going to different places, I probably have people in every state in the nation and in a lot of different countries that I could stop and see or meet for dinner. And it's all because I put Crash out there and I got a lot of help and a lot of great advice. And the friendships I've made because of him are just second to none. And like Tanya was saying, that's kind of how we met. And you know, on social media, people say, "Oh, you have 1,000 friends, you're just friend collecting." But I will tell you, I have many of those people. I feel like they are personal friends, and that's been really cool. But yeah, I love all my dogs, and but Crash was truly, truly my heart. I'm not out looking for another blind dog because I would never say no dog's going to be just like another one, but I wouldn't hesitate. I would not hesitate a second to take another. Yeah.
That's,
And, miss him like crazy. I'm thankful that he died quickly. I mean, I had to have him put down, but he got sick, and within 4 or 5 days, I knew that I needed to let him go. And of course, that's never easy, but I'm so thankful that he didn't suffer, and have multiple vet visits, for 4 months before the end. He went peacefully and happy, wagging his little tail, just like he did everything else in the world. But, they say a lifetime's not long enough.
how old was Crash when he passed?
He was almost 12. He would have been 12. So we don't know his actual birthday. We knew so January 5th was his birthday. And I think he passed, it was January 3rd, I think. So it's just a couple days before 12. And I held him, and I'm the one that told the vet his heartbeat stopped now. So I'm just on an aside, completely different from the blind dog. If you're afraid of euthanasia, don't hold your dog and love them, and, help them cross if you need to. It's a beautiful, peaceful process.
I'm just not ready. And as you said about all the people you've met through Crash, that's the same thing with Dexter,
Yes.
with his story and needing help when I was trying to figure out about his Chiari malformation, going into those communities and one of the communities that we met through, the Cavalier Army was, I think, how I met. And just, you don't think, at least I didn't back then, that you're going to build those friendships, out of the special dog or just the dog in general, that you can build that community. And it really is a community of people. And it's not just our breed, it's
Right.
all the different communities that come together with that, the same kind of concept and goals in life.
Yes.
Yeah, they're, just thinking about everybody that you meet online, and, obviously online can be scary, but it also can be a great, great place if you know what you're doing. But it is a special feeling to know that your dog, has touched other people's dogs. Cause, again, I get it too. People saying, "Oh, Dexter, I didn't know you were Dexter's mom."
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys ever do Cavalier people ever back there? Do you guys ever get together? The different online friends.
So, I used to, when I brought Dexter into my life, he was a puppy, and I started to schedule Cavalier. I had a big dog training center then. So I would schedule Cavalier play dates and kind of, meet people then. I don't have the big facility now, so I don't schedule them, but there is still another local club. And Dexter's fine with other dogs, but he's not that social. I want to say hi to other dogs. And now that he's 18 and a half, we don't do those as much. We'll go to play dates if there's a place that dogs are leashed versus it's all off leash because he doesn't, want to be bumped around. So we're kind of picky and choosy about which ones we go to and stuff like that. But yeah. Sometimes I'll go. Sometimes I'll leave Dexter at home and I go to the play dates because I'm like sitting on the floor and being, licked to death by all the cuties. And stuff.
Yeah. I know at our last one, since it's an AKC club, so there are breeders involved. There are a couple of intact boys that really took a liking to both my dogs, my boy and my girl. And a good amount of that time they stayed in their stroller because they were tired of, being humped. So,
yeah, and then some of the play dates aren't quite managed, to Dexter's expectations. So those are the ones we kind of leave.
Yeah.
But Jamie, I just want to thank you again for chatting with me today. And I'm sure that there's going to be people that have a lot of questions. So if you have a question or you want to ask something of Jamie, do leave it in the comments. I'll make sure that Jamie sees it so that she can give you any tips. And we'll also drop some links of some helpful information about raising blind dogs. And I'll ask Jamie off the video if there's anything that she thinks would be helpful. So I'll drop those links in the description below. But again, Jamie, I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day and sharing Crash and your experiences with Crash with us today.
Oh, thank you. And, I'm always willing to talk about Crash. So anytime. And thank you to your listeners.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
So I think that went well.
Yeah. You can tell I could talk about him for hours.
That's good. And you're a natural at it, just nice. Like you said, you were relaxed, had a conversational tone. It was perfect.
Yeah. I've done a lot of presenting, and I think being a teacher too, even though they're kids, I'm talking all day long,
What grade do you teach again? I know it's youngsters.
Yeah, I'm in 5th grade again. So, I think this is my 8th year in 5th grade. And last year I taught 6th grade math. And then 2 years before that, I was teaching 2nd, just to try out the younger ones. But
when I was young, I wanted to be a school teacher. And it was actually because of my 2nd grade teacher that I just really loved her. I just thought she was so awesome and stuff. So didn't go that route, but I like teaching kids and dogs together.
Yeah, well, and I think, a dog is a great inroad to teaching kids too, because, if learning how to behave around dogs and how to treat them nicely and, approach them appropriately. And
Oh, but thanks again, Jamie. I really appreciate it. And again, once I get my interviews with everybody, then I'll start working on editing.
Okay.
And I'll let you know ahead of time when we're going to do it. Do you know, is there any, there's always like such and such month and stuff like that. Is there anything for special needs dogs or blind dogs? Like, do they have a month or a week?
I would have to look that up and see. I don't know.
I'll take a look too. I just didn't know if off the top of your head you remembered.
Yeah, no, I don't, because that would also be cute to share in the classroom too, because a lot of times, we'll share, this week or this day is National Puppy Day or, whatever.
Yeah. There's always a day for something, I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Day. I'm like, okay, I'm getting a cake.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. And again, thanks for jumping on early too, even though Google had your time wrong.
Arizona time is a treat. Living here, I love it. I never have to worry about setting clocks back or ahead, but it's hard. Even calling my sisters, I can never remember. Are you 2 hours ahead or 3 now? Or no, they're either 1 hour ahead or 2, and I can never remember because I don't pay attention to daylight savings time because we don't do anything.
Yeah, and if you're enjoying today's video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I dive deep into all things dog training, natural care, and healthy living for you and your dog.